All right, I am on the road with my buddy Eddie Lent. We are headed to Blue Ridge for the Blue Ridge Adventure Race. Eddie, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did we meet? How did you get into long distance racing? And more importantly, actually, yes or no, does CrossFit work for endurance sports?
It definitely works for endurance sports because Andy and I have done some pretty stupid races, and we've made it to the finish line.
Yes. Okay, so the answer to the question is going to be yes, but then we're going to talk about why and all that other stuff. Okay, so give me some athletic background, or like how did you find and how did you find adventure racing?
I found adventure racing. I came to a point in my life where I was having to go out on notches on my belt, and it was a decision time.
What? Really? No.
Really.
Okay, so you won't be able to see this, but I'm of course like 5'2". Not really, probably 5'8".
5'10".
I'm 5'2", 5'8", but Eddie, it's funny when we run, I'm like that little teeny dog in the cartoons that's trying to keep up with the bigger dog. I just like, he's just like taking these huge strides because Eddie is like 7 feet tall.
Almost. Depends how you count. 6'3".
It's only 6'3" because it seems like really tall whenever we're running.
Only 6'3". You just need to stand next to my son.
I didn't know that you had the expanding belt issue.
I did have the expanding belt issue. It had a bunch of little ankle biters, and it was just came kind of that.
How did I not know that? We've been in the woods. This sounds bad. We've been in the woods together for a long time. I don't think I knew. What did you get up to weight-wise?
It wasn't that bad. I mean, you probably wouldn't have noticed.
Okay, because you're tall and skinny.
And tall and skinny. So
tall and not skinny, but
put a fair amount of weight on me, and you wouldn't know know.
But you knew.
But I knew. So I ran cross country and swam in college, and wasn't very good.
Did you swim for Georgia Tech?
I did not swim for Georgia Tech. I am nowhere in that class.
I mean, I pole vaulted for Georgia Tech.
Well,
anybody can get on the team, apparently.
That was where I was, except, it was a foggy mirror test, but it was not at Georgia Tech. So it was the don't drown test. If they push you in the pool, would you drown? No. Okay, practice tomorrow.
Okay, so you came out of that, got married, had some kids, and you're like, uh-oh. And then you found adventure racing. That is most people would have gone walking or like done anything else.
So there were a few steps.
Okay.
So I started.
Intended? Because it's adventure race?
Yes, it was a pun intended. So there were a few steps. So I started running around the neighborhood. And I had to go through the whole shin splint thing, and sort of, it was pretty painful starting out.
Right.
And one day, this guy at work comes in, and he's, mid-40s. He's retired military or whatever else. He says, the wife beat me at the marathon yesterday. I'm like, you ran a marathon? And so
challenge accepted. You're like, okay, I'm in.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And like,
right.
I've run, but so anyway, he tells me about his experience, and he uses this run-walk method, and that was sort of a game changer.
Isn't that the Galloway method?
The Galloway method, and he actually named it.
I actually know.
You know that?
Yeah, I know some stuff.
So the Galloway method, and he explained it to me, and from running in high school, if you ever walked, the race was over, it was dead, right?
Yeah.
So the concept of walking while running was completely foreign to me. I guess that's the difference between a competitive young person sport and a life sport.
Right.
But I okay, that's very interesting. So I started researching, and I actually used the Galloway method I trained for about a year to run a marathon, to run the Atlanta Marathon.
Wow. And a marathon is 26.2 miles?
26.2 miles, and I started off...
And you was on the asphalt?
On the asphalt. It was on Thanksgiving Day at the time. Man. And we started at Turner Field.
Yeah.
It was freezing cold.
Yeah.
And I did a 9:1, so I walked 1 minute and ran 9.
Oh, okay.
And before I even reached the first mile, because where everybody starts, I was starting walking. Mm-hmm. And that was a big ego swallowing because I had to start walking before I'd even run a mile. And everyone's out there clapping for you, yay, yay, yay. Right. And then you start walking and they're like, this dude is not going to make it. And I looked behind me, and they were, at that point, 5 people behind me, and then the bus. Uh-huh. That's how far back in the list I was.
Oh, wow.
But as you go on, then I would run and I would catch up to some people,
Yeah.
and then I would walk, and they would then get ahead.
Yeah.
And then so around mile 5, that happened by mile 10. You know, I would catch up and then sort of pass them, and then they may catch up to me.
Right.
By the time I got to mile 15 doing it, I could no longer see them because they were so far behind me.
Right.
So the Galloway method, it works.
But you have
telling
4
you.
children, so you have eyes in the back of your head.
I have.
So you should have been able to see them.
I should have been able to see them.
Bad joke. I'm very tangential in these things. Actually, let me take a step back.
Okay.
Most people probably have never heard of an adventure race. So we're about to find out how you got there, which actually I don't even remember, except we found each other on the online dating scene for adventure racing, but just another stupid story.
That's another stupid
What
story,
is an
yes.
adventure race, and what does it entail? What happens when someone does it? And
Okay.
why does it qualify to be an endurance sport?
Okay, so there's a history of how I go from running to adventure racing.
Yeah. So what is an adventure race first, and then we'll get into.
Okay, so
'cause I would bet like 2 people of the 6 people who listen to this are going to even know what that is, because they may know me and they may have heard it. But
okay, so most of the time when I was doing my running and people talk about adventure racing, they think of obstacle racing or mud runs, and sometimes they're actually marketed as adventure races.
Okay.
And that is not what we are terming, or the official term for an adventure race. So an adventure race is a multi-mode sport. So you'd use different methods of transportation combined with orienteering.
okay. And so what are the 3 typical ones?
So the 3 typical ones that you're going to have in every race are going to be trekking, which can be walking or running. It's going to be paddling, and that could be white or flat water. And it's going to be
Or
biking.
the ocean, because
We've
we've done some intercoastal, which is
done
not
some
fun.
intercoastal.
And then biking, yeah. So,
and then biking.
And the biking can be pretty aggressive and pretty tame, right?
It can be mountain bikes. It can be road. It can be gravel. And generally, you're on a mountain bike, but it depends on the length of the race and where it's set. Those are the 3 general ones.
Right.
And
then
to
they,
that,
yeah, and they get some weird other kind of side ones that.
whatever the RD can think up.
Right. Race director, yeah.
We've done. I've done one where we had ropes, and it's 3 a.m, and I'm doing a rappel, 75-foot rappel with a pack on my back.
Haven't slept yet. I'm tired. So it goes without saying, these things are sometimes dangerously stupid. Yeah. So
Pack rafting was another one.
Right.
So when we got down to the bottom of that rappel, we had to then blow up our raft, which was about the size of a tent, and ferry ourselves across a swift river,
Yeah.
right in front of some rapids, and then collapse it again, put it in our pack, and roll.
And so typically, what's the distance that people are going? Or what are your standard distance choices or hours? These things are measured in hours. So what's the standard hours for racing?
So just like in running, you have 5Ks and 10Ks and half marathons and marathons as sort of standard distances. Adventure races deal much more with what the local course is, but a standard short adventure race is somewhere in like 6 to 8 hours.
Sure.
And
that's 6 to 8 hours of continuous moving usually.
continuous moving. You may do it all inside of a state park.
Right.
It could be over a longer area, and it's continuously moving because the clock never stops, but you're generally moving more slowly. It's not like you're running. I can't run for 8 hours.
Right.
Well, you're not. You're stopping and you're looking at the map.
Right.
You're telling bad jokes. You're
Go in the bathroom in the woods? I don't know,
what
right.
the bears do in the woods, and that's what you're all
Bears
doing.
do whatever they want to do. Nobody tells a bear stop. So the race we're going to today is, I think it's me. Yeah, I'll go. Sorry, we're driving, and me and the other redneck weren't sure who should go. It's me. I have the right of way, but
You do have the right of way.
I don't know what happened there. So the one we're going to right now is a 10-hour race, which is kind of an unusual number. It's usually 8 or 12 is the numbers we usually come up with. But so you're out in the woods for 10 hours.
Usually sometime in the morning, right, until sometime where you got a couple hours. So I think this is from 8 to 6 or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. 8 to 6.
So it's a good day.
And
So,
it's daylight, which takes away a whole plethora of problems.
yes. So the next level up generally goes into the 24-ish. It can be 18, but
Right.
24-ish, and that then is a completely different level. It's like a marathon is not twice a half marathon.
Right. It's like
the
an
same deal.
Ironman. It's like you just upped it or something.
Because now you're dealing with trying to find your way in the dark with a map.
Yeah.
In addition, and you're not sleeping.
Right.
So that's a wholly
that's a good
different
point.
level.
So in a 24-hour race, typically you don't sleep until the very end, and you get in your cars to go home, and everyone falls asleep in the car, which is bad. So there are other races. We did a race one time that was 3 days across Florida from one ocean to the Gulf. And you've done it several times. I did it once and said I would never do that again.
I've done it 3 times.
That hurt so bad, and mostly because the bike and my rear end just got so uncomfortable with each other.
It was only, 240 miles
It
of
was
biking.
a lot
so
of
yes.
biking. Yeah, on a dirt bike. So we were laughing at some team that was changing out their tires from knobby tires to like road tires on their mountain bike. We're like, that's stupid. And then an hour later, they passed us, and we never saw them again.
Yes.
Like, well, I guess after 200 miles of biking, you're probably, every little bit counts. Yeah, that was pretty eye-opening.
So that's kind of the next level up, is somewhere in the 24-hour range.
Yeah.
Then the next level above that would be what we did in the C2C, which is a couple of, a short number of days, 36 to 72 to 100 hour kind of range.
Right.
Above 100 hours, you're starting to move into a different category too.
Right. Well, they've got one in Colorado, I think, is 4 days?
So then above that level, I kind of put another level
Yeah.
above that, is when you get into true expedition racing. Once you kind of get into the 3 to 4 or above that, you do kind of an expedition race.
Right. It'd be fun to do, especially if they were staged and we could get there and sleep. But we would always, if I did that, I'd be in the back of the pack, always just barely cutting the time. Like, usually if you don't make it by a certain time, you're out. Or if you make it to the checkpoints or whatever, or the transition areas ahead of time, you probably sleep and wait for everybody.
Yes.
But yeah, I would be the guy who didn't sleep for 4 days. So.
But the expedition racing is the top, is the granddaddy of them all. And you can, if you were to go to YouTube and Google Echo Challenge, ECO Challenge, the Discovery Channel did a lot of world-class early reality TV, and they call them Echo Challenge. So back in the 1990s
Yeah.
and the 2000s, and they're really good, especially if you're interested in leadership and team building.
Isn't it done by the same guy who eventually created Survivor?
And the guy left. There's a history there with the Raid Galois, which then he did Echo Challenge,
Right.
and then he left Echo Challenge, and Mark Burdett then became the producer of Survivor,
Yeah.
which to me is the antithesis of adventure racing.
Right.
So it is an
Do
interesting
nothing, sit
setup.
still, but challenges
and fight your own teammates.
Right, fight your teammates.
And so
Yeah.
it's the opposite. I don't watch Survivor because it's
No,
not what adventure racing is at all.
No, I like Survivor because of game theory. So
And that's an interesting one, yes.
yeah, so or Prisoner's Dilemma or whatever.
Yes.
If we both go for number 1, we're going to lose. But if we agree to go for 2 or 3, we're going to get way further, right? And you're like, that's a weird scenario.
Who's going to leave with the girl?
Yes, right. That's it. That was the what was the show? Beautiful Mind.
Beautiful Minds,
Yeah.
yes.
So I love that game theory. Occam's Razor, Sophie's Choice. I always like to throw in
Sophie's Choice is
Fulcrum's
rough.
Point.
You
That's
okay?
not. The engineer and him just cringed. Okay, so how did you get into? So anyway, we established that it is an endurance race. We're out doing these things, and you find adventure racing because how?
Okay, so just something with endurance racing. So we mentioned Echo Challenge.
Right.
Amazon actually brought it back a few
yeah,
years
that's
ago.
right.
And so Bear Grylls did a season in combination with Mark Burdett, and they did one in like 2000, I believe, in Fiji.
Yeah.
And you can go to Amazon and
I think that was
watch
more
it.
recent than that, maybe 2020.
It's 2020, yes. It's in the last couple of years from right
Yeah.
now. So if you want to what is world-class adventure endurance racing,
Yeah.
then those guys were in sailboats. They built their own boats at some point. They
That's
did
true.
floating. They were trekking. And the distances that you go are, you're not going, hey, 500 meters or 2 miles between checkpoints. You might go 20 or 25 miles between checkpoints.
And a little bit of off puts you way off.
little bit off puts you way off. You got to manage your sleep. You got to manage your feet. It's just a completely different. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think they tagged that one the hardest race in the world, but then they showcased like 18-year-olds doing it, and then a guy with dementia doing it.
Yes.
I know he was a stud runner from before, but
Yes,
I'm like, and then the group of 80-year-olds that were doing it. I'm like, if this is the hardest race in the world, you should be showcasing the most elite people in the world, not like. I don't know why these guys even came. And then those two girls had never done a race before.
That one I don't get.
I think they were like YouTube celebrities or whatever they call, like a influencer. I think they were just on there to pump it up.
And combined with sandbagging, because we've never done adventure racing. Oh, but by the way, we're massive ultra runners or something.
Yeah, they totally said that.
I'm like, okay, you've never done an adventure race, but...
So it's a weird sport, and you found it. I found it, well, I don't know how you found it. I probably knew. I don't remember now. So how did you get from, I'm going to do a marathon, to I'm going to run in the woods with some random people?
So I have a little bit of an engineering mentality, so I study something. And so I was learning how do you do this marathon thing, and learning about nutrition and training and electrolytes and everything else. And I came across this, marathon. Everybody was like, wow, marathon. But then there's this thing that these nutcases do, and it's called an Ironman, where they kind of stick the marathon at the end as kind of an afterthought. In the meantime, they bike 112 and swim 2.4. Those guys are real nutcases. Well, after I did my marathon, within a year, I was into Ironman training.
Oh, yeah?
So, and I was actually doing my first ultra, because once you've done the marathon, you're like, well, what else? So then you get into ultra running, which is another world.
Right.
That is completely different levels. Marathon is tough, but if you're doing 50 or 100 miles, that's a completely different ballgame. But researching that, got into the Ironman, and now your time frames that aren't for my world, 4 to 5 hours for running marathons, and now you're doing up into the teens with your time frame. And when I came across that, then a triathlon is a good summer day. I mean, you get to swim a little, you get to bike a little, you get to run a little, and then, what happens if you kind of do it all in the woods? And I've always been intrigued with this sport called orienteering, that people give you a map and you have this big treasure hunt, and you try to, it's like geocaching, but way better.
Yeah.
And
matter of fact, if you go to, I think it's GA Orienteering, or is it Georgia Orienteering?
GAorienteering.org.
Yeah, if you go there, they'll list out all the races that the Georgia Orienteering Club puts on.
One of the most active clubs in the nation. So if you're in this area for orienteering.
Yeah, because there's other active clubs.
Yeah, there are other active clubs. But if you're in the Atlanta area, it's a huge resource, and it's totally awesome.
And basically, you run through the woods looking for checkpoints, and the maps are pretty detailed. It's and they give you like a white level. It's like karate. There's a white belt, orange belt, black belt type thing, and so you can do harder or easier races. But so I didn't realize you were doing those already.
So as I kind of progressed along, then I'm like, well, this triathlon thing, there's off-road triathlons. Okay, so that means I need to sort of do this mountain biking thing. And I started learning a little bit about mountain biking. And then I'm like, well, I don't remember where I think we came across Echo Challenge, actually. Okay. And we sat and we watched them all, because they're really interesting from a team.
They are,
and
very
leadership and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, I just get goosebumps when I hear the Echo Challenge theme, because it's like, dang, that's like some awesome. So I view adventure racing is like the opera of sports. So if you think about in the fine arts world, you might go to a concert and somebody plays music.
Yeah.
Okay? Or you might go to a museum and you go look at somebody's paintings. You might go to a reading, a poetry reading, and somebody's, reading something. You can go to a play, and they're now adding acting.
Right.
Well, when you do opera, you have sets, you have technical stuff, you have the script, you have singing, you have the orchestra. You just put it all into one batch.
Right.
And I view adventure racing is exactly that. It's
So
like
basically we couldn't decide on what to do, so let's just do it all.
every cool thing you possibly could come up with, let's put it all in a pot,
Yeah.
and then like see who can do it and who comes out the other side.
Okay, so you find this, I guess we're establishing that Eddie is a endurance racer through and through. He loves these long things. And when you train endurance-wise. You do like you'll call me, I just got back from a 9-hour run. I'm like, what? Or I'm driving home from a 4-hour bike or something. I'm like, dang.
Yeah, I do that, and I kind of get envious when Andy says, like, yeah, I did my 45-minute workout.
That's right. So, obviously, I own the gym, and that's all I do is gym. I mean, sometimes I'll go for a run just because the timing is weird, and I just can't get into the gym. I actually don't like to work out by myself, so if I can't work out in a class, I'll just go jog. I don't know what it is. I just don't like working out. I like the camaraderie of it.
Yeah.
But so I'm doing CrossFit, which is basically a 12-minute workout with some weights and some other stuff. Well, you'll go and do the 2 hours on a run and 2 hours on the bike, which is fun, sort of. Not for training. I like it in a race, but not.
It's fun, sort of, and usually I do the camaraderie thing too. If given all else, I'd rather run with someone. So
Sure.
if I'm doing marathon training, find a group.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do some long runs by yourself. But that is a thing. I've listened to War and Peace. I've listened to While Running, Anna Karenina. I've listened to The Three Musketeers, The Man in the Iron Mask. So massive amounts of time that you're spending out there, it just really gets boring. I've done learn Pimsleur language courses.
That's awesome. So I actually like to work if I work out by myself in my basement. I've got some a rower and a bike and some dumbbells. So if I do it by myself, I usually put on a book on tape, or not. Well, they don't have tape anymore. A book on MP3, and I'll just listen to some podcast or a book. So that's funny that we do that the same.
The Art of Manliness.
I will. I haven't gotten there yet. One day I need to. So the other interesting thing about doing these races is I think if I counted up all of my man time, my alone time with other dudes, you and I have raced so much together, I think I like either double or triple the amount of time I have spent with any single person that's not like my wife or my family. Like just that amount, that's 24 hours or 3 days with the same person running through the woods.
When you're literally dead tired, hallucination level dead tired.
Those are bad days.
So and he really does bring up an interesting thing. Part of the deal with adventure racing, it's not just getting you across the line with a multi-mode sport. The true adventure racing is a team sport that is co-ed, actually.
Yeah.
So
I'm typically in the skirt.
Yeah, finding teammates is a really difficult challenge. And Andy mentioned that we were on adventure racing dating apps, and it really was.
Which is not what it's called, but it was just, hey, I'm looking for somebody to race with me.
Exactly.
I'm tall, I smell, I laugh, whatever. And you're like, it sounds good, let's try it.
Yeah, and it is a deal, and interesting. And we had to have a conversation what are your expectations? What are you trying to get out of the thing? And some of those early times, we decided to not do, as a first race, a really long race together.
I remember you mentioned that, and I had forgotten about that. Which you said that I said, hey, let's not do a 24-hour race in case we hate each other. Yeah. That sounds very reasonable. It doesn't sound like something I would say. I'm like, hey, let's just go and see what happens. I don't know.
No, it was
I'm glad I said something smart.
Atomic was one of them.
Yeah.
And so we ended up doing, I think, Strong up at a YMCA camp.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a kids race in the morning and an adult race in the evening.
That's at Camp Ocoee. We go there a lot.
So that was our first race, and we kind of hit it off. And it's been, I don't know, 15 or 20 years since then.
Was it just us, or did we have another one?
There were a few
did
others.
We have Naki with us, or that other?
Naki, I don't think was with us in that race.
No, we raced solo? Or not solo, but just us two?
I probably because we did one with Angel.
Okay.
But that may have been
Angel
a later
from
one.
Eric's Hellsprout. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Eric may have been. I know I did one of them. I don't know if that was the first race or not.
Was one of the first races we did where that one kid was running with his shoes on the wrong feet? Do you remember that?
Probably was on the kid race.
No. We were in some race. It was a 24-hour race, and this kid was like jogging beside me, and I'm looking at his shoes. I'm like, those shoes look weird. Turns out they're on the wrong feet. I'm like, hey, buddy. And he had, for a 24-hour race, he had one of those kids like cinch bags. It's like it had that little teeny string that really hurts your shoulders after a while, and then it just had that little cinchy top. And I asked him, he had a can of Coke and like 2 chocolate bars of some type. I don't remember that. And I'm like, how? So you're planning to make it through the entire race on that? And he's like, yeah, shouldn't that work? I'm like, on the other hand, I've got like 5 pounds worth of food and water and all sorts of stuff in my backpack. Yeah, so that was it is fun to see the newbies on the course. We always try to help, but
Dude, it is.
it's just funny to see what people's expectations may or may not have like lined up to reality.
Especially if you come from, I don't know, running 5Ks or something like that.
A supported race. Like
supported race, yeah.
Where's the water? Well, you see that bear pan? You just go filter that. And you're like, really? Yeah. There's swamps right here. Just filter the swamp water. You're like, sounds gross. But
that was one of the biggest things that I had to get over was the difference between the supported and the unsupported race.
Yeah.
You know, if you do a 5K, you got a volunteer or a policeman at every corner.
Yeah.
And you got some guy handing out water every mile. In an adventure race, you can go hours or up to a day often before you come across someplace where you get official race support.
Which I've never, maybe not never, I can't think of it, but I don't think I've seen anybody get like totally messed up that they had a problem. I think in the race we did at Oak Mountain, they were chasing down someone with a broken foot, weren't they?
Yeah, someone did. Was it a bike? Or I don't know, somebody was a broken foot. They had to go
get him out somehow. It wasn't that bad. It was just a small state park. So you train all the normal ways. You've been doing this. You've even just I think you said you did a 100-miler. You ran 100 miles in the woods.
Yeah, I just completed the Pinhoti 100.
And so the only 100 miles I did is I drove to Auburn to pick up Olivia's stuff from college to bring it home. And so it is funny, like you are into the distances and you train that way and you're totally sold on that. And I just do CrossFit and it's been 15 years. So when we met on our dating app, which again, it wasn't a dating app. I don't know what it was. Was it probably Facebook like group or something?
I don't really remember. It may have been Trailblazers.
It was Trailblazer forum. I don't think Facebook existed back then. Yeah. Did you ask, how do you train? Like, when did you find out that this idiot, me, is only doing CrossFit? And when did you think to yourself, like, oh shit, I've signed up? Or shoot, I can't. I'm not supposed to cuss on these. My bad. I signed up with this guy who's never going to make it through this race.
Well, it was.
Or did I keep it a secret? I don't remember.
So I don't remember when I found out that you did CrossFit, but I came from the other side of things where you're much more experienced than I was, and you had been racing for years, and I had not raced at all. So I was busily trying to learn everything I could from you. And so, dude, if that's CrossFit's what you do, then
it must work.
Okay, it must work. So that was kind of how I approached it. Like, he knows his stuff.
Well,
I don't.
Well, you didn't know that all the other teams are looking at you and laughing. Oh, he's with the little guy. He doesn't know.
We usually did pretty well.
We do pretty good. So it is funny that it doesn't make sense that it shouldn't, like, in the theory, in the write-ups, in the books that you read about all this training and how to do this stuff, CrossFit should not work. And yet here I am, able to race. Now I will say the salt, I have to take in more salt than most people. And I wish it was because I had a glorious amount of muscles. I don't know. It's not. But I do feel like I have to eat more electrolytes or salt than everybody else. So that maybe is something that, maybe I do carry around more muscle than a normal racer. But I don't look like I don't feel like I have more muscle than anyone else.
You're pretty well defined.
Yeah, say it. That's it. Say it.
You are pretty well defined.
I'm searching for the compliment. I was fishing for that. Thank you. Yeah, you called me fine.
There you go.
But so did it ever did it cross your mind that, wow, this guy, he should start running?
It's not.
Okay.
It really hasn't.
I should have asked you that before.
Because you were the more experienced, and I can see that it worked.
Okay.
And we have taken different tracks, but I can see it definitely works for you. I think we can start debating and talking about where when does it shine and when does the other? What are the weaknesses and strengths of both routes?
Oh, we don't even have to debate. I know exactly what it is.
Okay.
I basically am slower than you the entire race until we're about at like 3 a.m. And then you finally catch up to my just normal pace, and then we're good.
We're good.
But since we don't go to 3 a.m. anymore, it never really happens. So I do, I know, like, we did a race, the Swamp Fox, maybe a year ago, and I got overheated. And I remember looking at you going, hey, I don't feel right, something's wrong. And you're like, take all your clothes off. I was like, it's about time. No, he said, take your pack off and your shirt off and just bike, in the wind. I'm like, all right. And so many times I have handed my backpack over to you shamelessly, like, hey, take my backpack. And so the last race we did, Randy and I were racing, and he's like, I don't feel right. I'm like, give me your backpack. But because we're used to, like, it's the team thing, like, help each other out. How do you cross the line together, right? He more felt like, at least it looked in his eyes, of course, he was also a little bit heat stroked. He's like, I don't want to give you my pack because I feel like I'm losing. I'm like, no, we're not losing. We do this all the time. And he's looking at me like, I don't believe you. I'm like, literally, last year, Eddie carried all my stuff, and I just biked naked. No, I wasn't really naked, but biked down the road for like an hour.
It's the story.
Yeah, trying to get my my body temperature back down. But anyway, so I know definitely your training has advantages, but mine is like super fast, so I don't have to go out for 2 hours.
So I'm
over in like 30 minutes.
This ROI concept of how much you're investing compared to your return is a very is a good one to discuss.
Yeah.
In addition, you bring up the team aspect. If you have an opportunity to watch, I think it's called For the Team, WindShape did a documentary on some of the top, or one of the top teams that has won the Adventure Racing World Series at least 5 times.
Is that the guy with the Aboriginal dude from Australia?
Yeah.
That guy's insane.
He is totally awesome.
You've got to see that. I mean, I think he in the Fiji race, I think he was 60 and he looked like he was like 30. I'm like, dude, you look incredible. And he's just like
awesome.
Pulling the entire team the whole time. Like, I can't do Australian accent, but if I could, it'd be like, let's go, or whatever. It'd be like super, that dude, he is phenomenal. And they won that one too.
Yeah, so if you have an opportunity to watch that documentary, I think it's called For the Team, it's put out by WindShape, where they went to the Adventure Racing World Series and followed them for a race, and also went and sat and spent some time talking about, because they're a leadership training organization, to talk about leadership and about team. And they get into talking exactly what Andy says of how do you move the team forward without ego.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And that is a huge part of it. Like, one, you don't know what's going to happen out there, so just be ready for whatever. And it may throw your race off completely. That's okay.
Yeah.
You just, like, Jason's racing with us, and he said, hey, my feet hurt. I think I could walk the race. I don't think I can jog it. And I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll go with you. And he's like, man, all right. And so at the last race, he gave a Gatorade to one of our guys, Brad McDonald, who I had mistakenly said, you don't need your backpack, it'll be 20 minutes. And it was like 2 hours. And so he's dying, and so he threw us a Gatorade. I'm like, I like this saying I found the other day. It's, friends don't keep tally, they just show up. So I was like, hey, Jason, can I borrow a Gatorade? He's like, here. I was going to drink it because that's part of my plan, but your guy's dying. Just, you're right. So you find teamwork, you find, like, the race may just go sideways, whatever.
And just saying whatever is you kind of have to just roll. Part of the adventure racing is rolling with what the course and the race gives you.
Yeah. So when I raced with Evie at the, it was funny because you and I had just done Oak Mountain Adventure Race, and then, or it was a championship of some sort, right? I don't know what we did down there. And then we raced down there again. Like, the next race was down there, so I had just been here. So I'm like, I know what this course looks like. And so anyway, that's obviously an advantage to know what you're doing. But I'm racing with Evie, and so my number one goal is have her want to come back. Right?
Yes.
So
that is so important. So important.
She said, like, it was 999 times, hey, you want to do an adventure race with me? No. You want to do an adventure race with me? No. And so we're eating at the Crabapple Grill. We're out cutting into the steak. She's like, I want to do something epic, something adventurous. I'm like, well, there's an adventure race coming up. I said, you want to do it? Thinking I'd get the 1,000th no. And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'm like, what? And so we came up with the 4 F's, and it was fun. So we got to have fun first, and then no, take it back. It was for safety. So that was the first F, and then fun, and then finish, and then for checkpoints. So we cut out a lot of checkpoints. Weirdly, she came in first for solo female.
Really?
There was only 2. But
that's awesome.
That is awesome. She won her first race.
So you ran 2 solos as kind of a team
together.
It's
yeah,
an interesting way of strategy there.
Well, so the reason we did that is, one, we could get 2 maps. That way she could do the map, and then I could check over her shoulder without actually looking over her shoulder. And then the other is, they're doing the solo championship here in like Ackworth or LJ or somewhere close to us, and you have to have run at least 1 solo race to qualify. So I was like, whatever, I'll just register as solos and we'll go do it. But so it was supposed to be a 24-hour race, and you know me, I don't do those anymore. I don't really care for them. They just put up that it's going to be a 10-hour or a 24-hour.
Oh, wow. So they have to 2 categories.
Yeah, so I'm in.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So how did Evie do?
She loved it. She's like, this is, so I knew we were doing something right when I had mentioned, hey, you probably want long socks because you're going to get cut up out there. And she, in the race, turns to me, she goes, you know what you said about the long socks? I said, yeah. She was like, next time I'm going to wear long socks. And all I heard was, next time. I'm like, yes. So there is a next time. I don't know when it'll be. Obviously, right now it's finals-ish for them. So this was a bad opportunity. But, I mean, she liked it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she did not like the mountain biking, though we made a definite choice to go the longer routes, which stayed on paved and Forest Service roads. And she's like, I don't think I could have done any like actual mountain biking.
Okay.
I'm just not used to that. I'm like, that's fine, we just won't do it. Which cut out like so much of the map. which again is fine. It kept up. The first thing was for safety, and then it was fun. So yeah, so she really liked it.
So you have these dad memories, this kind of you're gonna have stuff that you're gonna talk about for the next 50 years, for the whole rest of her life.
I got some videos on. I kept my camera out. I was like, hey guys, don't disqualify us. Or if you do, I'm on a separate team. I'm just gonna keep using my camera or my phone to like film stuff. Okay. And they didn't DQ me. They're like, that's fine. It's kind of cool. This old guy and then a young girl. I'm like, dude, what about the old guy? You don't have to say it like that. Hunter followed us around for a while, and he's an extreme racer, all sorts of kudos and
world-class level
awards to his
racer.
name and all sorts of stuff. And he's like, you guys are going to make great media. Got this old guy with gray hair and this little girl all chipper. I'm like, dude, come on, I'm right here. He's like, I'll edit that part out. I'm like, but still, you said it. Anyway, he's fun. I like him.
Yeah, we remember when Hunter was quite young, probably 12 or more, is when we raced next to him.
Yeah, him and his dad.
So,
yeah, that's right. So, okay, so adventure racing, it's I don't know if I'd call it extreme, but almost everyone I say, hey, you want to do like a 12-hour race? They're like, no, because it sounds too long. The other day we were getting ready for a race, and I said, hey, did you pack all the right stuff? And you were like, it's just a 10-hour race. It doesn't really matter. I'm like, you know what? That's true. I could probably make it through this whole race like without the accoutrement that I usually bring.
This is true, but I do that level of arrogance does come with experience.
Right.
So we have learned School of Hard Knocks how much to take or not to take, or that our bodies can deal with not having stuff at certain times.
Well,
it is only a 10-hour race.
Yeah.
It's a 10-hour race or whatever. Okay.
If I need to, I'll drink out of the river. That's fine. Actually, have you ever had to filter water or drink out of the swamp?
I have. I've never done swamp, but I have filtered water a few times. Usually, it's on the expedition races. On the shorter races, you're never that far gone.
No. So
but expedition level races, then I have.
You have to, yeah, because you're out in like Colorado or somewhere.
Yeah, we were in West Virginia at that point, but yeah. So
we had there was this one race. It was me, Eric, and Brad. I want to say it was a gold rush, and we just all like I ran out of water, and Brad, I think it was Brad, was laughing at me like, you're out of water. Then he sucked his last water. He's like, oh, dang it, you knew that was going to happen. And so we looked at the map. So these maps are I don't even know where they come from. The National Forest makes them, or the Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh, so my topo usually prints them, but I think they get them. They're USGS.
USGS?
Yeah, USGS maps. Geological survey maps.
For whatever reason, they always mark cemeteries and churches. Yeah. So we looked at the map and we're like, look, there's a church. And so we went out of our way to go to a church and find their spigot and drink out of their spigot rather than filter water.
Thank you, everybody around the church in the middle of nowhere that we're not trying to vandalize your property. We're just trying to
really
take care
thirsty.
of your hospitality and giving a glass of cold water to a stranger, as Jesus talks about.
Had they had a QR code up, I would have Venmoed them some thank you money. But so what's a cool story or an interesting story that you could think of from your races?
Well, I want to hear a little bit more about Evie here. So,
okay,
Evie,
yeah, sure.
So what kind of training did Evie do? For you said it was a 10-hour race?
So she basically does soccer and CrossFit.
Okay, so she's pretty dang fit,
but
she's not like marathon fit.
Yes.
She's not like, I'm training for a marathon or I'm trying to do bike centuries. She's a young teenage girl who plays a lot of school
soccer
and club sports.
Right. So, yes, that was a concern for me is, hey, how's this going to look? So I gave her a backpack with just water in it, and I carried everything else. So, I minimized, you know how you're my pack mule when we do these? I just keep giving you all my stuff. Hey, can you carry my kitchen sink? You're like, damn it, sure. Why do you bring all these things?
It's a Dutch oven.
I know. Why? What do you need a Dutch oven
for? What do you need a Dutch
oven for? I have the cast iron skillet. It's like, I don't know, may stop and cook something. So I carried everything of hers, and then anytime we needed to stop to push bikes, and if she ever said, hey, can we get off and push? I'm like, yeah, every moment. And it was like a 1% grade. I'm like, sure, if you don't feel like biking up, let's do it. And then I would push both bikes. So I did everything I could to make sure that it was the second F. It was fun. I guess I should have put in there for taxing, so it wouldn't have taxed her too much. And then in the canoeing, I put her up front.
Okay.
And she was like, I'm trying to paddle, but I got little baby arms. I'm like, yeah, it is not just tap the water every once in a while. And so I mean, she did what she could, but I also looked really hard to find opportunities for her not to gas out.
Okay, so that's interesting that you bring that up. So you don't have to get every checkpoint on the whole map?
That's true. Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So she actually made a really good call. I knew we were going to cut off. So it's not like a marathon, right? Marathon, this is always funny to try to talk about an adventure race versus a triathlon. They're like, I just cut the race off. They're like, you can cut the swimming off? I'm like, well, not in a you can't. You guys have to swim, but if you didn't want to do something, you just So we get to this transition area up at the top of this mountain, and they hand you a new map. And they're like, it's already pre-plotted, but what do you want to go and do?
So this is a part of the course that you didn't know that you were going to have to run or do anything for, and you get there, and it's like, ha, there's a new map for you. Ha, ha.
Right, well, there's more stuff. I'm like, that's okay, this is how it works, it's a surprise, whatever.
Okay.
And so I knew, because when you and I raced, those checkpoints, the ones we skipped, were the same ones that were way out there, and I'm like, not the exact same ones, but they were far.
Yeah.
And I said, honey, I don't think we have time for that. We should probably cut those way out instead of making like this massive circle, shrink it by a whole lot, and just get, instead of getting 10, we'll get 5. And so she's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then she looked at the map and she goes, you know what? We're at the top of the waterfall right now. If we do it your way, we're going to go down, and when we have to climb up all of this steep waterfall stuff, what if we just go the reverse way, right? So instead of doing checkpoints 7, 8, 9, 10, she's like, let's just start at 10 and go the other, right? I'm like,
so this is a choose your own adventure. You not only get, you get to choose the direction, and you get to choose where or if.
Well, in this race, yes.
Okay.
So, the race you and I are about to do, that's not going to be the case. He's going to have us do not go in their property.
There's that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We will have to get certain checkpoints, and they're just So that is, I guess that's a good thing too, to talk about that. It's interesting because you make your own race. So I said to Evie, hey, the Ackworth race, there'll be the solo championship is 24 hours. And she said, I thought you don't do 24 hours anymore. I said, yeah, but we can just make it 15.
Okay.
Right? So you can just...
Yeah.
I mean, the people who win the races will do it in like 15.
They are not mortal.
No, they'll get everything and finish.
Right.
Whereas I'll just go and like cross the line. And they'll be like, how did you beat us? I'm like, no, I didn't beat you. I just turned around early.
But it is this interesting concept of not doing everything and then choosing your strengths,
right,
and minimizing your weaknesses to maximize your fun and to maximize your overall performance. I had a pretty interesting experience on one of the C2Cs that I did.
And again, C2C is a 3-day race across Florida. It's huge.
3-day race. They dumped us off at the Gulf Coast, and we had to finish at Cocoa Beach 3 days later. And it was a really long race, and I was doing it with a couple guys that I'd never raced before. They just needed another
Is that
teammate.
the guy that did it with just flip-flops?
And that's a different one. We'll
Okay.
get to that story in a moment.
Or not flip-flops, but Tevas or something.
Tevas, yes.
That's
but no,
nuts.
this is not this race, but that was another really interesting. He is tough. But so two guys, they had wanted to do the kind of Florida natives and wanted to do it. And I found out when in the middle of the race, I didn't do my homework well enough. They had never done a 24-hour race.
Oh, jeez.
So it was a bit interesting.
Which can be fine. You just should know that ahead of time.
You should know that ahead of time. But I have to give them kudos that they were like, we're going to do this thing. And they were all in.
Yeah.
So...
is that the two guys that came up and met us just recently and raced with us?
No. So I have not. I haven't raced with them since. I've kept up contact. One of them actually went on and went and did the Bear Grylls, formed a team for the Bear Grylls Echo Challenge.
Really?
So they've continued doing some of their stuff at a pretty high level. But we were going across, and the first night I think we slept like 15 minutes, then they're starting to waver, and their feet are getting bad, and so things are getting pretty rough. And the course designer actually made more of a 4-day race instead of a 3-day race. So they started having to drop things, but we're pushing cutoffs. So we're just off and
so
on.
what that means, if you get to checkpoint 21 and it's not at this time, you either like you're out of the race or they like shortcut you. Like you can't get those other things. So there's cutoffs to basically keep everyone together.
Keep everyone together, because it creates a logistical and safety challenges
over the entire state of Florida.
Over the entire state of Florida. So to help with that, you have to be at certain mandatory points by a certain period of time.
Right.
But what they end up doing is then putting extra points for the guys that are demigods and not mortal to go out and get. So we were struggling because it's Florida, and we bike probably 240 or 50 miles on the bike by the time we were done, and that's plus all the paddling and everything else we did. So we're just kind of just hitting the mandatory ones.
Yeah.
And so some of the better teams were out trying to get some of the further checkpoints, but what happened was that they didn't make cutoffs.
Oh, geez. So big teams were getting cut?
And they got DNF, so they were getting DQ'd because they were getting cut off.
Yeah.
So out of the 60-plus teams that started, this race has lots of stories, but only 12 teams actually finished the race.
Wow.
All the way. We were number 11th out of 12.
Well done.
And because we dropped a ton of checkpoints.
Yeah.
And
that's how Evie won her race.
It's a frustrating thing to do.
Yeah.
But making the choice like Evie, sometimes you're really surprised on how the strategy works out.
It is funny that when you and I were at Oak Mountain, and then that father-son combo caught up to us.
Yes.
And so it was funny. So we would take the straighter, slower route, and then they would get to this checkpoint, and we'd get there at the same time. They would punch, we would punch, and then they would take off. And we would just laugh and look at the map and then take the smarter route. And we would get to the next checkpoint, and we had just like basically kind of like walk jogged, and they were running. And they would show up with us. They're like, wait, we left way before you. We saw you guys eating peanut butter jelly sandwich. What are you doing? So eventually they're like, look, can we just race with you? Because obviously we're doing something really wrong. So there's 4 of us racing together, 2 different teams, and I can see that we're probably, like, we need to cut some checkpoints out. And everyone else is like, no, we don't. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna go bad. I'm like, whatever, I guess it's for fun. Let's just do whatever we want. But I can see it, and like, you're like, Andy, you're gonna cut a checkpoint early? This is too early. I'm like, it's not, this is right. And I was a little wrong, but we beat the other teams that tried to reach for everything.
We did, because we were...
had to shorten our race smartly.
Between the 2 of us, didn't we end up winning first and second?
Oh, that's true. That's right. We let the other guys get in, or they crossed the line just ahead of us. They crossed the line.
So right, someone has to be first.
Right.
So, but basically,
I forgot about
that. Was because of some of those decisions. The other teams, because you get penalized if you come in late, and they penalize you pretty heavily.
Yeah, 1 checkpoint every 10 minutes that you're late.
Yeah, to discourage you from doing that.
And it usually takes more than 10 minutes to find a checkpoint, so don't do that. So I think a funny story. Well, there's so many weird stories that happen, but one of my favorite ones was we were going down some night river, and typically when we're on the river at night, I start singing, and we got our headlamps on, and my headlamp is usually off because it flashes off of your paddles and blinds me, so I just keep it off. Yours is on, and it's up front, and singing along, and then I just hear this, and you just fall backwards. I'm like, what just happened? And I think I might have even yelled, duck, because there was a bird. Did I yell duck?
Because they were ducks.
Because a duck flew right beside you, and then you fly backwards, your helmet comes off, your lights come off, your paddle's in the water somewhere. I'm like, what just happened? My first thought is, oh, dude, you're dead. I don't know what just happened, but you're dead. And then you like do a sit-up, and your gear is just all over the place. It's like 2 a.m. Your light is on the bottom of the canoe in half water, and a duck had hit you in the face.
Yes, a duck.
It, I guess, got spooked, and they took off from the lake, and they were just like, they were buzzing the tower. They were just like flying right on the deck.
Exactly.
Oh man.
So it was, we were going downstream, and we were going at race pace downstream. He was taking off, or the duck was taking off, going upstream, and he had recently taken off, and so he was right at my head height.
Well, maybe he was blinded by your light.
It could have been blinded by the light, but it was as if you had put a chicken in a pillowcase, swung it around your head, and hit me. I had a headache for the next day, so I probably had a mild concussion.
Oh man, if you didn't, I mean,
it
junk went everywhere.
It broke the light on my helmet. The duck went plop in the water.
That's right.
The duck might have made it. I don't know if the duck made it.
Yeah. Actually, those I've seen them because I have ducks. I've seen them getting like half eaten by a coyote.
And they still survive.
And then the coyote runs away. They're like, I was just playing. I'm alive. I'm good. You're like, wow, you guys are pretty resilient.
So that is one of the more wild stories, to be paddling at night and then literally get plowed into by a duck. I mean, it laid me out in the canoe. It was not cool.
Oh yeah, and then I think we couldn't, or we duct taped your light back on or something. We had to bike with those later.
We had to then finish the paddle, and then we still had half the race left.
Right, in the dark. That's the hard part when you do night racing is keeping maybe not as bad now, light technology, LED lights and all that have come a long way, but keeping the light on at night while you're walking around and you're trying to be like, where's north again? And yeah, it's on your compass, but it just feels wrong sometimes. And then it's dark, and then like people walk away, you're like, where'd they go? I don't even know. Is your light off? And it's just, it gets confusing, especially if you're trying to like bike quickly. That's just scary.
Yes.
You just don't know what's coming around the curve.
You have to keep your head in the game, and night nav is wild, and you also got to make sure you have enough batteries.
Right, because it's great to have a lamp, but if you put it on high beams and you only have 3 AAA,
and it doesn't last that long.
It's not going to last that long. And weirdly, low beam, like you get those lamps and they're like, oh yeah, put it on low, it'll last 127 hours, and you're in your house checking it out, and you're like, oh, this would be good. It is not good in the woods. And you can see like 5 feet in front of you, and you need way more than that to like understand what's happening.
Right. Be able to read the terrain because you're giving a topographical map.
Yeah.
You have to be reading the terrain. So that is a part of adventure racing. Of the adventure is doing that, and also, therefore, some of the safety rules they have is you're not supposed to be too far apart.
True.
And
Which
that's one of the
everyone
reasons.
violates that all the time.
And you
can't really do it on a bike going downhill on those like trails.
Right.
Yeah.
But the basic idea is you need to keep together as a team, because somebody's light goes out, then you're kind of in a world of hurt.
It was Curtis Kanata. We used to call him Tutanka because he was built like a buffalo. Curtis actually texted me recently. He's like, I'm feeling the itch to do some adventure racing. I'm like, have you been exercising? He's like, good point. Let me do that first. But we were on, it was, I think him and Eric, or maybe it was John Jensen. But anyway, we're on a race, and we have the wrong lights. We have crappy lamps. And we're thinking, oh, these are going to work. They didn't work. That's when I started upgrading to, like, back then it was like get a halogen lamp with this like big battery and double battery, and it was like a 10-pound system. Anyway, so we're in the woods and we're like sort of like scanning around. They're like, hey, whose eyes are those? I'm like, that is an animal of some sort. So we're all like slinking near and getting closer and closer to each other, and these eyeballs are just staring at us. And they're like, what do we do? I'm like, I don't really know. Isn't it like if it's red, it's a bear? If it's green, it's a deer? They're like, no, it's the other way. I'm like, I don't know. And it was green eyes just looking right at us.
Well, is it a mountain lion? That's what
I don't
want to know.
And it was only like 10 feet away, and all we could see is the shine on the eyes. I'm like, let's just walk backwards real slow. So, I don't know. I had another, one time I was racing with Naki, actually, and he put a rock through the tire, not just popped the tube, but through the tire.
Ooh.
And so we're like, how are we going to fix this? So I had him eat 2 goos, and then I used the goo packs. We like bandaged the tire with goo packs. And
awesome.
then put a new tube in there. He's like, is it going to work? I'm like, yeah, it's going to work. I have no idea it's going to work. It worked. We made it through the rest of the race.
Part of the adventure.
It is part of the adventure. Had chains pop off. Oh man.
Derailleurs break.
Derailleurs come off.
Cheap side down.
Yeah, that's a good one there, cheap side down. So we're hitting this new race, not new race, it's the Blue Ridge race. It's 10 hours. I think I've done like 11 of these. It's been a lot.
So the Blue Ridge is actually, it may even be the longest running adventure race in the nation. I don't know, I don't know how many years they're up to, but it's 30 plus. They've had a couple different race directors. They've held nationals in the same location before. So it's one of the longer running adventure races that is the same kind of event.
And it is in the same area-ish, so you get to know the kind of areas. This is one of the races. This was hilarious. My dad was trying to run support for us, and I don't think you're like technically supposed to have support. He's just like,
Actually, in this race, they were required. That was the unique thing about the Blue Ridge, because you had to have a crew
that's right.
member.
They did have to have it.
Yeah, some other ones, but the Blue Ridge one required a crew member, and your dad was running support for us.
So he has done a couple times on support, and so he's like, Andy, watch this. I don't know why he always sounds like a plantation owner when I do his voice, but that's just how he is. Like some Southern, he's not Southern, he's from North Carolina. Well, I guess that is Southern, but he's from a Confederate state like South Carolina, or Northern state. Anyway, he says, Andy, watch this. I'm like, okay. He's like, this guy just, and so the way you put the boats in at at the camp, there was a really steep embankment, and it was probably like a 45-degree like hill. And the guy got in the canoe in the back, and he's like, ladies, lower me into the water. And he's like, oh, watch. And so they start lowering him, like getting him over the hump of the hill, and he's got to go down like 12 feet or something before he even gets to the water. And you got these 2 girls holding on to some guy in a big boat that's going to be slippery, and sure enough, pop, right out of their hands. He goes darting like an arrow right for the water, and of course, the boat doesn't have buoyancy at a 45-degree angle. It has buoyancy when it's flat. So he just goes, boosh, and water sprays everybody. The canoe's up like halfway into the water. He's up to his like waist or neck or whatever. And man, he gets up and he starts cussing out these girls. And I'm like, oh wow. And he's like, he's still like, watch. And so the girls like flip him off and like, whatever, we're out of here. So he didn't even make it like 10 minutes into the race. And these girls are already, his teammates are like, you're a jerk, we're out. And so I don't know what they did, but it was humorous. We watched 100 teams jump into the water all at the same time. And we waited for 10 minutes and then got in the water after that. It's like, yeah, you guys go, we'll just be right behind you. So.
And you did so, and you were dry.
We stay mostly dry.
Mostly dry.
The Toccoa River is a tricky river because it's only 2 feet deep, and then there's rocks everywhere. So
yes,
you really have to pay attention to what's happening.
One of our funny stories that I remember we were doing, I think it was during a 24-hour race with Stephanie, and we were 3 people in a canoe on the Toccoa, and 3 people in a canoe.
Yeah,
you have a little bit of trouble with you're heavier, and now you're hitting paddles.
It's a smaller canoe. Usually they give you the smaller ones, and then you put 3 people in it. You're like, yeah, our clearance isn't going to be great.
So we're going through. There's class 1 and 2 rapids on that river. So we're going over a little bit of rapid, and we're an open deck canoe. It's not. We don't have airbags in it or anything else like that. And the deal is usually you keep paddling because you got to keep the momentum and the power going, and the guy in the back that enables him to steer. So I think I was in the front or something. Andy's usually in the back. Stephanie or I were up in the middle in the front. We're paddling, and we go over. The nose dips down, and he's like, paddle, paddle, paddle. We go over the drop, and we keep going, and we're sitting upright. The boat is not dumping, and we're paddling, and then we kind of end up at the end of the rapid, and we realize that the boat is absolutely full of water. The gunnels are at the level of the water. Everyone's sitting upright in the boat, but the boat is completely submerged, and we're all paddling as hard as we can straight ahead. We're like, in the water. We're like, okay, guys, we got to get out. So we all get out of the boat, but the boat is completely submerged. And then dump the water. We did not tip. That was the deal. We did not tip.
But somehow submerged ourselves.
Completely submerged.
Yeah, I do remember that. We were like, I guess let's just beach it, and then
we just had to beach it.
Didn't it eventually start to thunder and lightning on us on that one?
Probably. So that Coa's in that section also interesting because the homeowners there are a bit on the ornery side.
Weirdly, they own their homes. They don't want us on their property. Yeah. So I'm okay with. I mean, I get that, but there was I raced once with Laura Batista. And I said, hey, I think the key to this race is going to be getting down the Toccoa before it gets dark. And she's like, really? You think? I'm like, remember how bad this river is? She's like, yeah, but we'll have to skip so many checkpoints. I'm like, I think it's going to be worth it. So she's like, all right. And we skipped, I don't know, 5 or so checkpoints that should have been reasonable to get.
Okay.
We got on the river, made it all the way down to the lake. The sun went down. We paddled across the lake, no problem. Come to find out, the vast majority of the teams had to beach their canoe and just pull up in people's private property and spend the night because they couldn't make it down the river because it was they kept tipping over and all of that.
Asca Rapids. Or
the rapids and then the just rocks all over the place. I'm like, that's crazy. So
interesting strategy decisions, but sometimes they don't go that way.
No,
but frequently, they do. That's the risk. If you
cut stuff off the race, you'll still at least finish.
So maybe we should talk about scoring. So explain the scoring.
Yeah. So basically it goes by how many checkpoints, or when you finish, is how many checkpoints did you get, and then what time did you come in. And so it's checkpoints first, time second. So it doesn't matter if you're the first over the line, somebody can still beat you. So that's why they can never give out oh, you're first, good job. Like, nah, we have no idea if you're first. Now, I guess if you cleared the entire course and you were over the line first,
then you can come in last. You can be the last person across the line with 1 second to spare, and you can win the race.
That's right.
Because you got more checkpoints. But the sad part is when you drop this checkpoint, you come in an hour early,
right,
and then you get beaten by the guy that came in 45 minutes later with +1 checkpoint.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh.
Which almost could have happened to us in that one race. We came in 45 minutes early. Yeah.
And so you don't know. That's part of the deal, that you don't know from the direction people are coming. You also don't know what they've dropped.
Right.
And you're head to head, but you kind of don't know that, and that's part of the
adventure.
That's part of the adventure.
Well, that's why I think one reason I like this is it's kind of cerebral. You don't have to be the fastest, but you need to make smart choices.
Yes.
So speed is good, but smart choices are better.
Yes, and you cannot zone out. You got to have your head in the game the whole place. You kind of
Or at
check
least
out.
somebody on your team needs to have
Somebody
their
on
head
the team
so
has to.
because we've zoned out before, like, hey, take the map.
that's
I just
true.
feel like an idiot right now, and you're just like
somebody
"Hey."
on your team.
Somebody has to pay
Hopefully
attention.
more than one.
So I don't think I told you that on the race Evie and I did, we finished with 2 hours to spare.
Oh, you
So we
did?
cut enough stuff off. And I'm like, oh, I think we're gonna come in really early. She's like, yeah, that's okay. We'll just get cleaned up and
And
go get dinner.
you hit the second F, right? Fun.
Right.
So
That's right. She had
that
fun.
was that point.
And
you're
finished. We
making memories.
had fun and finished, and we had steak. So that was the other.
Oh, the steak. Okay.
So, I guess the big question is, does CrossFit help with endurance racing, or can you do it?
Our original topic.
Yeah, and I've been racing since I think 2000, since 2008, just using CrossFit. And you've been racing since 2008, 2006?
Well, you think you've raced longer than I have. So I was probably 2010. I think I did an Ironman in 2010. So I started adventure racing kind of after that.
So all endurance-based training.
All endurance-based training.
And I mean, our racing togetherness is probably like laughable because I'm like 4 feet tall and you're 7 feet tall. His hips come up to my shoulders. So when we go, your strides are like incredible, and I'm like, do. I feel like
you have way more buff than I am.
That's it. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
So, but it works. I think probably the biggest reason it works team-wise is we have the same mentality of this. Where, we have similar hobbies and things we can talk about while we're out there. So it is interesting to get to know people. And I think also, like, team-wise, we're both okay going, I mean, whatever, it's just a race.
Right.
If you broke your foot and we need to call it quits, okay.
We should probably do a whole nother podcast talking about the sort of the expectations and team aspects and bits. So that would be actually another topic to deal
The
with.
last podcast, so Evie's podcast came out today that we recorded about 3 weeks ago. And in there, it was basically about our summer strength program. But she gets into a whole bunch of, hey, parents that are on the sidelines at your kids' sporting event, stop it. So I'm like, this is probably a whole nother podcast we could do, kid. Like, how not to be that jerk parent. But so yes, inside of these things always comes more topics of, that'd probably be worthwhile to hear. There's some canoes right there. I wonder if they're maybe headed towards the same race. So potentially, if we're awake enough, on the way back, we'll do a short rundown of the race.
Yes.
And then I'll try to like throw it in. I don't know how to splice them together with this and the other one, but maybe it'll be like, hey, this is a Tuesday episode and the other one will be a Friday episode. But
do another episode.
It's always interesting to hear what happened right afterwards.
Right afterwards, when you have all the fresh stories.
Right. So this coming March in 2024 will be the Swamp Fox adventure race.
Yes.
And that guy, Steve, always does a really interesting race. And more importantly, it's super flat. So I've had about 12 people at the gym say they're in. So we're looking for everyone to come out and race. The only thing you really have to have is a mountain bike, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you need to get maybe a hydration pack, like some sort of camel pack.
Yeah, they require, I think, 3 liters of water carrying capability.
I thought it was 2.
2 or 3.
2, something.
Some amount. So you gotta have a pack.
Right, you gotta have water.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I know. I think that was your phone because you're connected. So you've missed a bunch of phone calls. You thought it was me?
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah, the problem with trying to podcast in the car, we have no idea whose phone is doing what. All right, guys, if you're interested in racing, give us me a shout. I'm happy to help out. If you're here local in Woodstock, you can join us. If you're wanting to train for it, CrossFit Garage is our gym. Come train with us. If you just want to come try a race, let me know and we'll get you. You can do the regular running and biking and whatever. Canoeing is a hard thing to train for. Just kind of like don't train for it and just show up and just hope it works out well, I guess. But it is funny to see people who can't like canoe at all and they just go in like small circles. It's pretty funny. All right, that's pretty good. If you, like I said, if you have questions, just give me a shout. Hope to see you guys soon in a race.